Gosh, that's a great question. I don't know if I've ever been asked that. Like, what is the it factor?
The It Factory is back for season 2. Last season, we explored what the It Factory is, who has it, and how they got it. This season, we still seek to answer the same questions, but with a new cast of characters. We take the helmet off some of the new faces in the Conference of Champions, and some familiar faces as well. Players, coaches, and experts will explore what it is that sets them up for success on Saturdays. I'm Yogi Roth, and welcome back to the It Factory. Welcome back, or welcome to the It Factory, presented by Zayo. I'm your host, Yogi Roth, and today we get to stay in LA. Granted, my guest is not beside me physically, but he's just down the road a couple of miles, and it's one of my favorite players in the league. He's played in almost 60 games in his career in college football. Only one season in the Pac-12, but it feels as though he's been here his entire career. You probably guessed it. It's Jake Bobo, wide receiver, UCLA. Wide receiver now, competing to get into the NFL. The season is over, but Jake, you are on this show. Welcome to the show, man. How you doing?
I'm good. That's high praise right there, coming from Yogi Roth, one of his favorite players. I'm honored.
Hey,
happy
man.
to be here. Thanks for having me on, man.
Yeah, of course. You know what's amazing to me is that you played in 57 games in college.
Yep.
Like 57 games. Did you think coming out of high school you'd play in like 12, let alone 57?
I don't know. To be honest with you, I didn't really know what I was getting myself into. It certainly feels like my lower body feels like I've played in 57, 60 games. But it's been awesome, man. It's been a blast. It's been a great 5 years. Couldn't have asked for anything more.
Yeah, all right, we're going to dive into all of that. But before, I want to bring us way back. I'm an East Coast guy as well.
Yes,
Grew up
sir.
in Pennsylvania. You're an East Coast guy in the Northeast, right?
Yes, sir.
You don't have the accent until I've seen you. I've seen you around Chip, and all of a sudden I feel like it like comes back again when you're around somebody else from that community. So if we both
Funny
slip
how that
into a little Northeast accent today, that's all good. But growing up, I'm wondering what your house is like, because it feels as though like you probably were in your crib with every sort of ball, hockey stick, like whatever your parents had. I feel like they just probably dumped on you because you became this amazing athlete. But what was it like as a child in this athletic family?
Yeah. So I have two younger brothers, Luke and Mac, and we grew up. My mom was a teacher and kind of a guidance counselor at a prep school up north of Boston, and it was a madhouse all the time, 365 days a week. I don't know how my mom did it, but she did, and we were always, jacking around doing something. Whether we were out after school, out on the varsity football field, or in the wintertime when there was 3 feet of snow on the ground, we were, on the court, in the gym, doing something. I grew up playing ice hockey, playing lacrosse in the spring. But like you said, yeah, we always, all three of us, always had a stick in our hand, always had a ball in our hand, throwing it around, tackling each other, wrestling, doing something, busting our heads open every once in a while. But I mean, it was awesome. That's kind of what I, attribute some of my athleticism to, is just always being around a football, a basketball, a hockey stick, whatever it was. Me and my two little brothers, we always had something going on.
So both your parents were really impressive athletes. Being an athlete runs in your grandparents'
Yep.
bloodlines as well. Was sport pushed on you? Was it, was there pressure to play, or did you just kind of, that was life?
Yeah. It kind of, like, you hit the nail on the head. That was life. That's kind of just what we did. That's what, was fun growing up. By no means, I don't think I was pushed into kind of anything, especially, as I got older into, middle school, even high school. My dad always preached, do what you love. And it's just so happened that, all three of us, sport is what we love. And I think that was something that, brought us together as a family. You mentioned my extended family has, a ton of stuff going on, whether it's the Olympics, whether it's college sports, professional sports. That's kind of just what we do as a family. Thanksgiving, we have, touch, oftentimes tackle football games out in the backyard. And, Christmas time, as soon as, we're done opening presents, we're out in the front yard doing something. So it's kind of, that's life. That's kind of what we do. And that's kind of how I remember it too.
Curious how you found out about your parents' athletic backgrounds and if you can describe your interpretation of their athletic careers.
Yeah. So my dad has a bunch of VCR tapes of his high school and college days down in our basement. And so what's funny is he never, gave them to me. I'm, probably 6, 7 years old down in the basement rummaging around looking for something. And I come along these Longview High School or Dartmouth College tapes. And so I put that on and me and Luke, who's the middle brother, we just watched those. That was kind of, instead of movies or whatever it is nowadays, Netflix, whatever, we were just down in the basement watching my dad's high school highlight tapes, and he'd come down and we'd make fun of him or do something. But that's kind of the first imaging, I guess you could say, I got of kind of my dad's career. I kind of got the sense that my mom was a stud just through pictures. And her family, she's got three younger sisters. And so I was kind of exposed to their athleticism when I was younger, and then that kind of led to, okay, what did mom do? And so that's kind of how I learned about, both mom and dad. I learned about it from other people. Everybody's always talking about, oh, your dad's a great athlete, your mom's a great athlete. But again, I got to see it with my own, had to see it with my own two eyes to verify that information for sure.
What's a picture of your mom look like when she is dominating it, as you reference, as an athlete?
Yeah, they're all hockey pictures. So she played hockey in college, and they're all black and white. Hopefully she doesn't get on me for saying that. But they're all black and white, and you see her on the ice, and I didn't see any of her, putting her face into somebody's chest and laying them out on the ice. I kind of wish I had. I've heard a bunch of those stories, believe it or not. But yeah, just kind of seeing those pictures up on the wall, my grandmother's house up in Maine. All the, her and her three sisters are all up on the wall, pictures of championships or action shots. And so, that's always a fun time going up there and seeing those.
Yeah, I always love asking that question, and I love your dad's quote of "Do what you love." I'm around high school quarterbacks a lot. I just wrote a book about it, and the pressure sometimes that athletes feel from their parents is I think sometimes too much, and the parent may not even recognize they're putting that on their child, and their child is definitely trying to live up to a dramatic expectation that they may not set for themselves. But it seems like your parents just kept pouring onto you like the idea of sport because you were asking for it versus them pouring it on you because they wanted to see it. Would that be fair to say?
100%. My dad tells a story of when I was in the third grade. In my town, didn't start tackle football until the fifth grade. And so I was on him so much that I wanted to play real, tackle football, that he had to call around to other towns and ask if, they could let this third grader in their Pop Warner programs. And I ended up going to the town over in Lawrence, Mass, and playing Pop Warner there. But I think that's just a great example. He never put pressure on any of us. Obviously, he was at every game, drove us to every practice, him and my mom especially. But there was never any pressure. I think that was one of the greatest kind of aspects of my childhood is that, I was pushed, but I wasn't pressed to do anything. I came up with, I want to play football, I want to play basketball, I want to play baseball in the spring. And they were there every step of the way, so it was awesome.
Yeah, I'm stealing that one too. Tell your parents, push but not press. That is going into like my dad repertoire, 100% right now. Okay, so you come out to UCLA.
Yeah.
You just finished up a season in LA. The first time you lived this far away from home. Your previous college was Duke. How was it, man? How was that SoCal lifestyle for you?
It was awesome. I mean, awesome in the sense that I found out so much more about kind of myself than I think I would have staying in my comfort zone in Durham, or maybe being a little bit closer to home. But I was kind of out here on my own, at least for the first couple of weeks before, the UCLA guys really kind of took me under their wing. But it's been awesome. I mean, obviously the football season was great, 9 wins, but there's been so many other factors, so much stuff going on outside of that football building that I've been able to push myself to find out things about myself that I didn't necessarily know before.
What's an example of something you've learned about yourself that maybe you wouldn't have if you weren't outside of your comfort zone?
Yeah. I think an example of that, I think a lot of times, you know, I don't want to dive into the whole transfer portal thing, but guys, you know, tend to group that decision into the category of like a business decision, and that certainly was my case. I jumped in the portal, and you know, my kind of idea was I'm going to go somewhere for a year. I'm going to win football games, and I'm going to try to put myself in a position to, you know, try to take a shot at the next level, and that was it. And kind of what I found out about myself this last year is that that by itself isn't gonna, you know, isn't gonna cut it. I'm not a great business decision guy, and I value relationships so much more than say results. And that's something that I definitely found out about myself is that you know, if I'm gonna do something, there's got to be a deeper reason for me to do something than just, you know, maybe to better myself or to put myself in a better position than maybe I was before. That's probably the biggest thing I found out about myself this last year was it's all about relationships for me, and that's something that I can definitely use going forward.
That is powerful. You value relationships greater than results, because I've
Yeah.
talked to so many players that have entered the portal,
Yeah,
and you're right. Like, it's a business decision. It's
no
a
doubt.
6-month stint, maybe it's 2 years, but
Yeah,
that's pretty much what it has been throughout the early stages of that. And I love that you've referenced that the relationships have kind of trumped the business or the
yeah.
results side of this thing. What do you think somebody who met you day one at UCLA would say about you after, you know, what has been 6, 7, 8 months
Yeah,
of getting to know you at UCLA based on the relationship?
that's a good one, Yogs. That's a good one. I would hope that they would say football is what I do. It's not necessarily who I am. Um, and I'm going to tie this back into the kind of the relationship piece. You know, relationships have to be number one, and that's kind of what I've, you know, strived for this last year, especially. And I want football to be a massive part of my life, but I don't want it to be my identity. I think a lot of times as college football players, you know, we struggle with that, and you know, football has to be what we do because it can kind of just go away at the, you know, snap of a finger. You can break a leg, knock on wood. You know, your playing days could be over, and you got to find another identity. And so for me, I would hope that's kind of the, you know, phrase that people would describe me in this program the last couple months I've been here, is that I value people more than, you know, I hate to go back to relationships, but I value people more than the results at the end of the day. And that's kind of, you know, the development that I've had, maybe moving a little bit out of my comfort zone this last year. But it's been awesome to kind of realize these things about myself, and will, you know, definitely use some of the things I've learned this last year in the future for sure.
Have you ever traveled outside the country?
I went, speaking of sport in my family, I went to Italy for the 2004 Olympics.
Ooh,
I
how old
think
are you then?
I was 5. I think I
Ooh.
was 5. Is that right? 2004, was that, is that an Olympic year? But
Yeah,
my aunt,
because 2000 was one. Yeah.
2000, okay. Yeah, my aunt was in the Winter Olympics playing hockey. So we went to Rome. That was awesome. I don't remember a ton of it, but I think that's the only time I was out of the country.
Yeah, I say that because travel is like the core of my being, and has
Yeah.
been since
Yeah.
I finished playing. I started to
Yeah.
see the world a little bit.
That's
And I'd always say that you go to, let's just call it Italy, or like my first big trip was Peru. And I went to hike Machu Picchu, which was like one of the 7 wonders of the world. And
Yeah, how'd
it
that
was
go
epic.
for you?
It was killer, man. It was awesome. It was like
Nice.
8-day hike, life-changing hike. But here's
Yeah.
my point, is that I got on a plane to go see a place, Machu Picchu, the old city, the hidden city, however you want to describe it.
Yeah.
And what I ended up seeing was myself in a completely different light.
Yeah.
And I think that travel does that for you. Like, you go to see something, but you end up seeing yourself. I still do it now. I'm in
That's
my
a great
40s
point.
with 2 kids, and we went to Italy over the summer, and we saw these amazing things, but really I got to see myself and my family dynamic in a more unique, beautiful, different light.
Yeah.
So I guess I ask you that of like, here you went to UCLA as a business decision, right? You traveled out west per se,
Yeah.
and you thought you were going to see, I'm sure, another 70 catches and a Blitnikoff type year, and you've had a hell of a year, obviously.
Yeah. Thank you.
But it seems like I'm hearing you say you see yourself
Yeah.
and even the sport of football in a different light.
No doubt. Yeah, that's money right there. That's a great comparison. Yeah, definitely came out looking for something that, wasn't gonna kind of satisfy what I needed, which was to find out more about myself and who I am and kind of what I want to do in the future.
Yeah, it's amazing where I got these helmets behind me. You wear a helmet.
Yeah.
I really feel football players, and Chip has let me at times come in to talk to your team about it, like we do media training, storytelling training, and it's like you got this helmet on, and really quickly to fans, you can be a 24/7 profile, a huddle highlight film, a YouTube highlight clip. Like even you, to me, when I first heard of you, I went to do those few things, right?
No
On
doubt.
signing day a year ago. Oh, they got this 6'5" wideout. He's going to remind me of Drake London. The offense will run through him, a difference maker for UCLA. But you take a helmet off. I mean, that's the whole point of the podcast that we're doing even started, was to take the helmet off the athlete.
Yeah.
Do you feel as though at UCLA, because of Chip Kelly and how it's so based and founded in relationships, that it's been easy to get to know guys because that is, a front-loaded principle within this program, getting to know people?
Yeah. I think football is awesome because it forces you to do that. You know what I mean? Like, you go to war with your teammates. And obviously I mean that not in a literal sense, but it forces you to get to know people. And I think that was the great thing about, me coming out here is I met, 100 new brothers of mine that I didn't have before. And again, football is a great teacher, and it taught me things about myself that I wouldn't have known otherwise, especially coming out here. But like you said, I think this program especially helps with that. And Coach Kelly's, he preaches, like you said, there's a person under that helmet. And that was something big for me that I had to realize.
Yeah. How is it being out here with him, having grown up in relatively the same community?
Yeah. He sticks out like a sore thumb in the best way possible. In the very best way possible. But he's awesome, man. He's all business. He tells you what you need to hear, not what you want to hear, which is unfortunate at times. But no, he's been awesome being able to come out here with him. Like I've told you this before, but he kind of reminds me of a couple uncles or a couple friends' dads that I had back at home growing up. A couple Pop Warner coaches, but it's been awesome. It's been great, kind of having him to kind of I don't want to be dramatic in any way, but to kind of remind me of where I've come from. And I'm in a little different space out here, but can always be yourself.
Yeah. How has he, Jerry Neuheisel, Ryan Gunderson, how have they taken your game to another level?
Yeah, they have, for sure. I definitely would not have had the year I had if it's not for, those three and the rest of the staff. But I think the biggest thing, looking at it kind of from the outside in, is moving me around. Which is something I wanted to do coming in, and something they've definitely given me the ability to do, is play in the slot and play outside as well. But I tend to think most of my skill set is suited for in the slot, and they've been able to put me in position to be successful in there, whether it's on third downs, whether it's short yardage situations, whether we're in the red zone and I'm in there running option routes in all three of those situations. So that's been awesome. And, I definitely cannot thank those guys enough for doing that.
For anybody who's typed in Chip Kelly on YouTube at UCLA, they've heard him say the phrase books and ball.
Books and ball.
I think UCLA has the coolest and most intriguing grad program in the pack. And I'd probably argue the country. I don't know everybody's, but I've never heard of one like this. And it's transformational leadership and coaching. You're in that grad program too, right?
Damn right.
All right, so what is it, for those that don't know it, and how has it impacted you within your time at UCLA?
Yeah. kind of one phrase to describe the program is basically it just builds leaders in an academic sense. So what we do essentially is we go out and we study some of the great leaders in the sports world. And I think it's geared kind of to folks who want to coach in the future. But again, it's kind of for anybody that wants to lead any group of people in their lifetime. And what we'll do is we'll go out and we'll look at some of the great coaches. Like, I'm writing a paper right now on Bob Knight, John Wooden, and their kind of differing coaching styles and how that may apply to me in my future. Maybe being in a position to lead people one day. And it's been awesome for me to kind of dive into some of that, because that's something that I want to do. I want to be a great leader, but how do you become a great leader? You learn from great leaders, and that's been awesome for me so far.
Yeah, it's been fun. I get to go into Miss Val's class once a year and kind of be an adjunct guest professor. So I'll be there in February. You'll probably be out training somewhere.
I will, unfortunately. Yeah.
Miss Val, fortunately for you. Fortunately, you're not missing too much, man. Don't worry. Just subscribe to this podcast. You'll get all the gems.
Done.
I'm curious though, on that front, you said you want to be a leader.
Mm-hmm.
What leadership school do you subscribe to? Because you just referenced like Bob Knight. Like he and Chip Kelly couldn't be on different paradigms, different ends of the spectrum.
Yeah. I guess a combo of all of them, right? So you look at Bob Knight, and I think a lot of what people see is the nuts Bob Knight. And, I would never want to play for that guy. But the greatest part about this program is, you go and read Bob Knight's book. And you find that, okay, this guy was number one, a successful coach. But number two, he was a pretty good coach, and the guys that he was coaching wanted to play for him. And I think that's the biggest thing that kind of I found throughout this program is, what can I do to help or make people want to follow me? And that's, you got to go and you got to read books and you got to write papers on, what aspects of certain coaches and certain coaching philosophies do I want to, take into my future.
I usually ask this only to quarterbacks. I want to ask it to you.
Yeah.
I think that quarterbacks specifically, or maybe even like you as like an older transfer, you're just kind of counted on to lead.
Yeah.
And I'll share with you a conversation I had with a premier quarterback in this league a few years ago, who ended up going to the NFL, top 15 pick. And he pulls me aside. This is, I think, heading into his junior year. And he goes, "Hey, Yoke, the staff asked me to be more of a leader." And it was almost like he was whispering. He goes, "But I don't know how to lead." And it dawned on me that, like, oh my God, like forever we just think quarterback is this leader, right? Or we think you as this veteran. Of course, Jake Bobo is this amazing leader. Like, do you think that it's taught and learned? Do you think that it's innate in you because you played in, almost 60 football games in your career?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I wrote a paper on it this quarter on whether or not, leadership is learned or whether you're kind of born with it. I think it's learned, Yogi. And the reason I say that is because I have learned so much in this past year in this program about what it means to truly be a leader. I thought I was okay at it, coming in, but I've learned that there are so many holes in kind of my leadership philosophy and what I can shore up going forward to kind of ensure that I am providing the best leadership possible for any situation. And that's been something that's been awesome for me to go through this whole year. But I think it's definitely something you gotta learn how to be a leader, and you've got to be in leadership situations and mess up in leadership situations, in order to kind of better yourself and better how you want to become more of a leader.
Okay, so give me a trait that you think a leader needs to have or needs to learn, as your paper would suggest.
Mm-hmm. I think self-awareness is one of the biggest kind of traits that a leader can have. And then also kind of emotional intelligence. I need to walk, as a leader, you need to walk into a room and be able to read the room and then how people are going to react to whatever you do, right? So I got to know myself, and I also got to know how I'm going to come off to others, in order to kind of, read people and be able to realize what they need. What can I provide, in order to, lead the group or lead them individually going forward.
Okay, so number one, send me your paper. That needs to happen. I want to read this. You should publish it. That's number two. Ask, the department over there, comms department, how to figure that out, because that's a great one.
I'm waiting on the grade for it. You might not say that after the grade comes back.
Okay, but I want to double click on what you said around EQ, emotional intelligence.
Yeah.
Loosely defined as having the capacity to deal with your thoughts and the thoughts of others with empathy. Yeah. I really believe this. I'm very bullish on the idea of college athletes coming out of high school, and especially now in the transfer portal. A projection is placed on them. I told you, I put a projection on you before we even met. Not very fair, but oftentimes athletes feel as though they have to live up to somebody else's expectation.
Yeah.
So what's your advice, having just lived through it as you're transitioning to the NFL, of how to manage that, how to deal with the thoughts of others that may impact the thoughts of you?
Yeah. First of all, delete Twitter. That is the easiest thing that I can say. That's a great question, Yogi, because I'm not sure I got a sufficient answer for you. People are going to talk. That's kind of just how college sports and especially college football works. People are going to talk about you. People are going to, put expectations out there for you to meet. So the biggest thing for me is, I guess I would say, define expectations for yourself, first of all, and make sure everything that you do is to reach that expectation, and try as much as you can to push others' expectations to either, the back of your brain or as far away as from your thoughts as possible. Define expectations for yourself, and then, chase those expectations with everything you got.
I was talking to a quarterback the other day who, was reportedly offered millions of dollars to go to a college.
Yeah.
And it was really hard for him to manage all of the projection that was placed upon him.
I can't imagine.
And I said, how are you going to deal with it? And he goes, well, I'm just going to turn my phone off. And I said, hey, that's fair.
There you go.
That's not a tool.
Yeah.
Like, that just buries it and buries it. And I just feel like the way to process is to actually process.
Yeah.
So if I gave you a route that you've never ran before, well, what type of learner are you? Visual learner? Okay, watch it on film.
Yeah.
Auditory, hear it from your coach. Kinesthetic, I got to actually walk the route, jog the route, run the route. I say that because I think athletes, and I wonder if you agree or not, if you're in this class and you live it as a current athlete in this generation, of like communicating and processing it versus burying it. And I think there's a difference, because I think it comes up, and like, I was never near the player you were, but damn, do I wish that I processed versus like buried. And here you are on the other side. I'm kind of curious, having lived through this collegiate experience, if you would agree with that assessment.
Yeah, 100% agree. And if you bury it for long enough, it's going to come back and bite you in the tail eventually. So I couldn't agree with you more. Face those expectations, and then go after them. Yeah, I'm with you.
I love every coach I talk to, I say, how are you front loading mental skills on campus?
Yeah.
Because athletes need that more than they need physical skills.
Yeah, that's a good point.
On campus. Okay, so with that said, Chip Kelly gave me a quote that I thought was magnificent. He wrote a letter in his quarterback book, and his job in it, he was an ambassador, and he gave advice to the quarterback coming up, like the next guy, right? The next guy at UCLA, for instance. And he said, quote, praise and blame are all the same. And it hit me like a ton of bricks. And I was like, whoa. And I called, coach, praise and blame. Talk to me about this. Praise and blame are all the same. Have you heard that from him before? And what's your thought on that?
Honestly, I haven't heard that from him before. Yeah, I mean, I'm with it 100%. I mean, especially from the outside looking in, right? Praise and blame are all the same. The only thing that's different is that result and how it makes you feel for a split second, and then you got to react to that and move forward.
Yeah, I love that. Most impactful or fruitful relationship you've had since you've been at UCLA is whom?
Probably Jerry Neuheisel, to be honest with you. Either Jerry Neuheisel or the relationships plural that I've been able to have with my fellow receivers. The dynamic that room had before I got there and how it shifted when I got there was awesome. Like, those guys welcomed me in like I'd been there for 3 years. And I can't ask for anything more. Obviously, Jerry has taught me X's and O's wise so much about the game of football. But their ability to kind of welcome me in and almost kind of make me the leader of that room without me having to ask was, they didn't have to do that. And that was something that was really, really cool for me to see and for me to feel, and was instrumental in kind of my individual play this year, but then also as a team. I think that just shows you how this team works. Winning those 9 games, I think, is a reflection of how that team and how that room especially kind of welcomed me in.
All right, I call these my final 5. First thought, first response.
Yeah.
Question number 1.
Mm-hmm.
The best advice you've ever received is what?
I kind of already gave it to you. My dad preached it. Football is what you do. It's not who you are. And that's something that I had heard before, but I didn't really feel until this last year.
Worst advice you've ever received?
Oof. Chase what makes you happy. Happiness is fleeting. It's not real. Chase fulfillment. Chase purpose.
When you enter your next wide receiver room, what is that franchise going to get with Jake Bobo?
A guy that works his tail off. And he works his tail off not for himself, but for the team. Whatever team that is, you're going to get a guy that, he's going to work his butt off to get you as many wins as possible.
Title of the show, as you know, is The It Factory.
Mm-hmm.
I think the it factor, that phrase, is overused and often undefined.
Mm-hmm.
But you see it when you see it. You have it. How would you describe your own it factor, Jake?
I'd say my it factor is how I work every day. I think a lot of people kind of use football to get other things in life that they want. Football is kind of just what I do. I think that's what kind of makes it, my work ethic, the it factor. Every day you're going to get the same dude, and every day you're going to get a guy that works his butt off.
Yeah, I love that. I wish you were my teammate, man. Last one. You've been through a lot in your life, right? You grew up playing sports, as you referenced, with your siblings. You grew up pushed but not pressured.
Yeah.
And then you've been at multiple schools, and you played in almost 60 games in college football. So answer the final question for me. It all comes down to
relationship.
Yeah, that's well said, man. I mean, I remember the first time I met you in person in spring football, and Ted Robinson, my partner, and I were together, and it was easy to see how you connected not only to us, but to other people. And then tracking you in your stint at UCLA, clearly anybody you talk to references the relationship they have with Jake Bobo. Not surprised, man. Appreciate you.
Thank you, brother. Yeah, it was an honor. Thanks for having me on, man. It's been a good time.
Yeah, well, hey, relationship's just beginning. That's Jake Bobo. Jake, you're invited back anytime. We'll be tracking you throughout your NFL process as you gear up for the draft and beyond. And now, of course, LA is a home for you anytime you want to come on back. So I expect more advice from your parents so they can give it to you and you can share it with me so I can give it to my kids. So let's keep that train going if we can. And for everybody listening or watching, we appreciate you. If you want to watch this thing, just go to pack-12.com/insider, or you can go to our homepage with the It Factory. It's got every single episode. And if you listen to the podcast, it's easy. Just type in It Factory Yogi Roth. This episode will pop right up. And for anybody in the National Football League scouting wide receivers, if my advice is worth anything, Jake Bobo is going to make your franchise better. He's going to make you better. And it's going to be one of the most dynamic relationships you'll ever have. So go draft Jake Bobo. Thanks for watching. Peace. It's the Afterglow. Jake Bobo. Can you believe it? 57 games.
Yeah.
Like, I would love to play in 57 games. I hope he plays in at least 57 more in the NFL. What was your takeaway? If you could ask one question we didn't get to in our time with him, what would it be?
It was funny when you said 57 games. He's like, yeah, it feels like 57 games. He's like, my body hurts. I'm like, yeah, okay, that's fair. Also, I was really excited at the beginning. You guys were talking about both being from back east, that the accents might come out. I was waiting for it. I was waiting for a little bit, but to no avail. Questions wise, honestly, as you and I have talked about, I'm always kind of typing down notes and questions and stuff throughout. And every question I was like, ooh, that would be a good one for afterwards. You guys hit on. Either you brought it up or he answered it without being asked. Because when you were talking about, you guys really went in on relationships. But for the first half of the podcast, he didn't necessarily say like what relationships like impacted him, like which ones were the biggest. And then you asked the question and he said Jerry Neuheisel was probably the biggest. And then he goes on to talk about some other ones as well. But so that was one. And then when he was talking about Bob Knight and John Wooden, I was like, all right, I got to hear like where he's fallen in that. And then he answers it right away. I was like, well, I got nothing for this. I was really excited him talking about the Olympics. But besides that, I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to ask Yogs what he wishes he asked, because all the questions that I was hoping for, you answered.
Oh, man. Yeah, I almost went into my own. I have one Bob Knight story.
Ooh.
It was amazing. I went to his camp. I spent a whole summer. I said, Dad, I want to go to basketball camp in Indiana.
Mm-hmm.
He said, sure. But here's a paintbrush. You're going to paint the garage. We have like a barn as a garage. So I painted a garage all summer. No friends came to visit after the first 2 days because they were put to work instantly. But I went out to camp, and we have this guy on our team, like our big center. Like in high school, he was probably like 6'3".
Mm-hmm.
And a massive dude. And Bob Knight in his summer camp, like a lot of head coaches, they're not out there at every drill, but you come out and address the camp like a couple times.
Mm-hmm.
So he came out to address, call it midday, day 3 or something. And this guy wasn't paying attention. And he unloaded on him. Unloaded like only Bob Knight could unload. And he goes, oh, you're so smart. You don't want to pay attention to me? You got all the answers? Why don't you tell everybody what the key to basketball is? Come on, stand up. He had him stand up.
Oh.
And this is a guy, big dude, bald. He starts rubbing his head. I'll never forget. I'm sitting there like sweating for him. And he goes, well, key to basketball? He's rubbing his head. Just got to play hard. Just got to play hard, guys. Like he owned the moment. And it infuriated Bob Knight even more. And I do not subscribe to like the Bob Knight School of Leadership by any stretch of the imagination. But that moment was like seared into my memory. So when he said it, it took everything for me to be like, Yogi, this is not an interview about like your Indiana experience. This is like him and his transformational leadership and coaching master's degree. So anyway, Bob Knight story for you.
I love that. I absolutely. Well, I mean, I never got to go to a camp by Bob Knight, which actually I'm kind of a little jealous about. I'm not going to lie, but my dad was a longtime basketball coach. And so Bob Knight was a person, he always talked about him and Wooden and various different guys. And it was interesting. Jake said something that my dad always talked about too. They said it in kind of different ways, but he was talking about how Bob Knight had a very unique style of coaching, to say the least, but he's like, but the people that went there wanted to play for him. That's one thing that my dad always would talk about too, was that like, you knew what there was no punches pulled at like who Bob Knight was. You knew what you were getting when you went there, but people still went there and they wanted to play for him. And there was just something in which I thought was really interesting. Him talking about like what Jake talking about, what makes people still want to go play for him, even though how like aggressive he is as a coach and stuff, which was really an interesting point for that.
Yeah, well, it's a unique time in sport. I still think athletes want to go to a school because they know they're going to get, the coach is going to make them better.
Mm-hmm.
And now I think they also want a coach that's going to have a relationship with them. And that's what I love about Jake and Chip Kelly. I've talked to Chip a lot about Jake Bobo and, from the same neck of the woods in terms of the Northeast, that part of the country. Jake calls him Uncle Chip because of their relationship. And I've watched him in practice, and like Chip does coach you hard, and Jake loves that part of him, and he has made him better, but they are very connected on so many different layers of their relationship. And it was cool to hear from him. And I really believe that it feels like Jake's been in this league for the entirety of his career, but he's really just been here for the entirety of one season.
Yeah.
And he's one of my favorite guys I've gotten to know. I think he's got so much to him. And I really mean it to those teams in the NFL. And I've talked to a few already about him. Like, you know what you're going to get. You're going to get a guy that'll contribute on the core special teams. He'll make plays for you as a wide receiver. Tremendous hands, size, body control. And I'm looking forward to seeing where he goes in the NFL, when he gets taken in the NFL, and then, of course, what he does when he gets there. But an awesome guy. And I think for sometimes in the portal, we've seen guys come into this league this year that you don't get to know in their 12-game stint.
Mm-hmm.
And we've seen guys like Jake that you get to know and you're like, oh, like, I'm going to talk to you for a long time.
Absolutely. No,
So-
I agree. And one last thought, I'm a little jealous about him going to the Olympics. I'm not gonna lie. I was blessed to work on the Olympics.
Emmy, there it is. The Emmy plug.
but actually going and getting to see that would be an experience all itself, which is really, really cool. He got to do that.
Yeah. What wasn't cool is that when he was like talking about the year of the Olympics in the early 2000s, he's basically like telling us when he was born, which was in the 2000s. And you're just like, I'm born in 1981. What the hell is going on right now? So anyway, that is that. TJ, as always, a great job. Congrats. Go to TJ's Instagram page. Check out the Emmy that he won working the Olympics. One of many to come for you, I'm sure, your brother. And for everybody else, it's been a fun start to the new year. TJ and I will continue to break down our resolutions, our words of the year. Stay tuned. Let us know how your new year is going. As always, we love the conversation and the chatter on social media. And for those in the NFL who need a big-bodied wide receiver, he's your guy. Take a listen to this. And for those UCLA fans, I know how appreciative you are of the impact that Jake Bobo has had in his lone season as a Bruin. With that said, we're out. Happy New Year. Hope all is well. Peace.